I'm Chloe Vance, 31 years old, and 7 weeks ago, I trusted my mother and sister with $10 million in cash, the final piece in my dream to reclaim our family estate. By morning, they vanished. Along with the money, they left nothing but a note. Thanks for the investment. I thought I'd lost everything, my legacy, my career, even the man I loved. But last week, I got a call in the middle of the night, and what I learned flipped the entire story upside down. Let's just say, my mother and sister are in Venice right now, sipping champagne and spending a fortune they don't know is fake. Before I share exactly how I turn the tables, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, hit like and subscribe, because this story might be the closure you've been waiting for. Growing up in Savannah, our family lived in the elegant shadow of what once was. Vance Hall, our ancestral home, stood empty, a monument to a forgotten grandeur. My mother, Alara, spoke endlessly of Vance lineage and old Savannah families. But the truth was, our actual bank account was usually as dusty as the antique portraits she cherished. We weren't poor, not like some, but we were constantly living on the edge of appearances. My mother had inherited a small trust, but she bled it dry over the years, maintaining a facade of prosperity, charity galas, expensive but rarely used memberships, and a relentless pursuit of social validation. She'd dabble in speculative investments, always chasing the big win that would restore our rightful place, but they inevitably turned into unfortunate setbacks. I, on the other hand, was always drawn to tangibles, to building. While other kids dreamt of debutante balls, I was sketching blueprints. My determination wasn't just about success. It was about reclaiming our family's true legacy, not through faded names, but through tangible creation. My high school counselor, Mr. Henderson, once told me, "Chloe, you build like someone's trying to tear something down." And in a way, he was right. I was trying to rebuild. That drive earned me a full scholarship to a prestigious architecture program. I worked through college, sending money home when I could, even though Alara would often dismiss it with a wave of her hand saying, "Oh, darling, your talent is your true gift, not these petty finances." But I knew she always accepted it. My younger sister, Serena, was 5 years my junior and, well, less driven. She had an artistic temperament, flitting from one passion to another, painting, poetry, photography, but never committing to anything that required actual effort or discipline. Mom made endless excuses for her. Serena's spirit is too free for the mundane. But in truth, Serena was allergic to responsibility, and her artistic endeavors almost always ended in a financial emergency that I was expected to solve. Overdue studio rent, exotic art supplies, last-minute trips to find inspiration. I always sent money, often biting my tongue on the advice I knew she wouldn't take. There were moments, though, when I caught a flicker in Alara's eyes, a subtle tightening of her smile, when I spoke of a new project, a new client. I'd show her photos of my award-winning designs, and she'd say, "How wonderful, dear. Such a practical use of your talents. But will it ever truly replace Vance Hall?" She seemed proud on the surface, but I always felt like my success was a mirror reflecting her own unfulfilled aspirations, a subtle judgment rather than pure celebration. When Ethelred landed the Vance Hall project, I knew it was it. The chance to buy back and restore the family's historic estate, to give it a new purpose, a beacon of modern, sustainable design. It was a full-circle moment, and the payout was substantial. The owners, descendants of the family who bought it after our ancestors lost it, were eager for a quick, clean sale due to a complex estate issue. They'd specified a strong preference for a significant cash offer to streamline the process and beat out other interested buyers. It was a unique situation, requiring me to withdraw $10 million in physical currency. My fiancé, Ben, a grounded environmental engineer, was wary. "Chloe, this is risky," he'd said, running a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that signaled his deep concern. "A wire transfer is standard. Why cash?" "The sellers want certainty, Ben," I'd explained, holding his hand. "There are other bidders, and cash speaks volumes here. It's only for one night. I've hired Liam Maxwell's security firm. 2 armed guards will escort me from the bank to Mom's house, then to the closing." "Why Mom's safe? Why not a bank vault?" He'd pressed, his brow furrowed. "Her ancestral vault is practically impenetrable. I had it installed for her after a minor security scare last year," I'd replied, glossing over the fact that security scare really meant Alara had misplaced some of her antique jewelry, which later turned up in a pawn shop after Serena's urgent need for creative funding. I just told myself it was for her peace of mind. The day I walked into Coastal City Bank to withdraw that $10 million is etched in my memory. Mr. Davies, the private banking manager, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Ms. Vance," he'd pleaded, tapping his pen nervously, "this amount in physical currency, it's highly unusual. It's approximately 22 pounds per million. You're talking about a significant logistical undertaking." I was firm. I'd done my research, had my security arrangements, and I knew a cash offer would clinch Vance Hall. After what felt like an eternity of waivers and stern warnings, the bank reluctantly began preparing the funds. It took 3 business days to get that much cash. When I told Liam, my security contact, about the unique nature of the withdrawal, he'd suggested a contingency protocol, given the sensitive family dynamics he'd observed over the years when guarding my high-value architectural models. I'd signed a quick addendum during a chaotic moment at the bank, barely glancing at the fine print, just trusting Liam implicitly. 2 days later, Liam's 2 best men, Owen and Bryce, collected the 3 heavy duffel bags of cash from the bank. The drive to my mother's grand but slightly crumbling Georgian home was uneventful. Alara and Serena were both there, supposedly preparing for a garden club meeting. My mother's eyes widened at the sight of the armed guards carrying the bags inside. "Goodness, Chloe," she'd exclaimed. "Is all this really necessary?" $10 million isn't something to take lightly, Mom," I'd replied, directing them to the study where the vault was hidden behind a sliding mahogany bookcase. As Owen and Bryce carefully placed the money inside, I couldn't help but notice Alara and Serena hovering in the doorway, their eyes fixed on the bags with an unsettling intensity. At the time, I rationalized it as natural curiosity. Now I understand it was something far more calculating. After Owen and Bryce left, a strange tension filled the house. Alara busied herself in the kitchen with unusual enthusiasm, while Serena peppered me with questions about Vance Hall, its location, the price, and whether I plan to install a similar vault. During dinner, Alara asked questions she'd never shown interest in. "So this money," she'd said, swirling her iced tea, "it's all in cash, not checks or anything?" "Yes, all cash. Mostly large denominations," I'd answered. "And the bank just lets you walk out with that much?" Serena had asked, her voice a pitch higher than usual. Later that evening, Alara took a long phone call in her bedroom, door closed. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed. "Everything okay?" I'd asked. "Oh, just a neighbor, darling, confirming a social engagement," she'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. I slept in my old bedroom that night, the grand 4-poster bed feeling strangely uncomfortable. Around midnight, I thought I heard whispers in the hallway, but dismissed it as my imagination. Had I known it would be the last normal night of my life, I might have paid more attention to the unsettling quiet, the unusual interest in the money, the secret phone calls. Instead, exhausted from the stress of the withdrawal and the upcoming purchase, I fell into a deep sleep, completely unaware of what morning would bring. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the tall windows. The house was unusually quiet. No sounds from Alara's kitchen, no Serena humming a show tune. An uneasy feeling began to creep over me. I walked to the study, the mahogany bookcase ajar. I slid it open. The vault door stood wide open, its contents gone. "No, no, no, no," I whispered, my voice rising with each repetition until I was screaming, "No!" I tore through the house, checking every room, every closet, as if the missing money might be hiding somewhere. In the kitchen, I found a note propped against the antique porcelain vase. Written in Alara's elegant cursive hand, "Chloe, thanks for the investment. We can finally live the life we truly deserve. Don't try to find us. Alara and Serena." My legs gave way and I sank to the kitchen floor, the note clutched in my trembling hand. The room seemed to spin as the truth settled in my gut like a block of ice. My own mother and sister had stolen my money and fled. I fumbled for my phone and called Ben, barely able to form coherent sentences through my sobs. "They're gone. The money. All of it. They took everything." "Chloe, slow down. Who's gone? What happened?" His voice was thick with sleep. "Mom and Serena. They cleared out the vault and disappeared. $10 million. 20 minutes later, Ben burst through the front door, his eyes wild with concern. He found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at my phone. "I've called them 20 times," I said without looking up. Mom's phone goes straight to voicemail. Serena's rings once, then disconnects. They've blocked me. Ben knelt beside me, taking my hands in his. "We need to call the police right now." The next few hours passed in a blur. 2 patrol officers arrived first, followed by Detective Miller, a sharp-eyed woman with salt and pepper hair. She took detailed notes as I explained the situation, her expression giving away nothing. "Let me make sure I understand," she said. "You voluntarily brought $10 million in cash to your mother's house, placed it in her vault, and now both your mother and sister are gone along with the money?" Put like that, it sounded impossibly naive. I nodded, shame burning my cheeks. "And you have documentation for this cash withdrawal?" I showed her the bank receipts and security company paperwork. She photographed each one, then asked, "Do you have reason to believe they were planning this? Any unusual behavior recently?" "Nothing concrete," I admitted. "They seemed interested in the money, but that's natural, isn't it? $10 million in cash isn't something you see every day." Detective Miller's expression softened slightly. "Ms. Vance, I'll be honest with you. This is a complex situation. Because you willingly brought the money to your mother's house and placed it in her safe, it could potentially be argued this was a gift, or a family financial arrangement gone wrong." "A gift? I was buying Vance Hall. They knew that. This was theft." "I understand and will investigate thoroughly, but you should prepare yourself. Family matters involving money can be challenging from a legal perspective." After the detective left, promising to put out an alert, Ben held me as I alternated between sobbing and rage. "Who does this?" I kept asking. "What kind of mother steals from her own daughter?" My phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. With shaking hands, I opened it to find a photo of Alara and Serena boarding what appeared to be a private jet, both wearing oversized sunglasses and wide smiles. The message read, "Always wanted to fly private. Thanks for making it possible." 5 minutes later, a voicemail notification appeared. It was from Serena, likely using a burner phone. "Hey, sis." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Bet you're freaking out right now. Well, get over it. You've had everything handed to you your whole life, while Mom sacrificed everything, maintaining that pristine Vance image. All those years of watching you succeed, building your fancy structures, while we struggled to keep up appearances. That money is our turn. You can make another 10 million with your big brain, but this is our only chance. Don't bother looking for us. By the time you hear this, we'll be in a country with no extradition treaty. Love you." The casual cruelty of her words felt like physical blows. Had I really been handed everything? I'd worked myself to exhaustion for years, taken enormous risks with Ethelred, and always shared my success with them. I'd bought Alara a new car, covered her investment losses, helped Serena countless times when she was in financial trouble. "They planned this," I whispered, the realization dawning. This wasn't opportunistic. They saw the news about the Vance Hall project months ago and started planning then. Ben paced the living room. "We should call Detective Miller back. Tell her about the text and voicemail." I nodded numbly, still trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. My own mother and sister. The people I'd trusted most in the world. The people I thought would always have my back. They'd seen my success not as something to celebrate, but as something to exploit. As Ben called the detective, another terrible thought struck me. Vance Hall, the purchase that was supposed to happen today, I was now short $10 million, with no way to replace it in time. The life I'd worked so hard to build was crumbling around me, and the worst part was that the people who destroyed it were the very ones I'd tried hardest to lift up along the way. The following days blurred together in a haze of police interviews, lawyer consultations, and sleepless nights. Detective Miller became a constant presence, her compassionate professionalism offering a small anchor in the storm my life had become. "We've confirmed they left on a private charter to the Caribbean," she informed me, 3 days after the theft, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. "From there, we believe they took another flight, but we're still tracing that movement." "How did they even arrange a private plane?" I asked, cradling a cup of coffee I couldn't taste. "Your sister contacted a charter service 2 weeks ago. They paid cash, presumably some of your money, and used fake identification. Very methodical." She hesitated before adding, This level of planning suggests they may have had help. What kind of help? We're looking into some connections your mother appears to have made recently. There's evidence she was in contact with individuals known to facilitate this type of disappearance, and ironically, to deal in stolen art and antiques. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You're saying my mother was talking to criminals, planning this? Detective Miller's expression remained neutral. We found searches on her computer for countries without extradition treaties dating back 3 months. There were also encrypted email exchanges. We're still working to decode them. It felt like discovering a stranger had been living in my mother's skin. The woman who'd lectured me about the sanctity of Vance integrity had been plotting a multi-million-dollar theft for months. What about relatives? Could they be staying with family somewhere? Detective Miller asked. I shook my head. Ilara has a distant cousin in Europe, but they haven't spoken in years after some falling out over an inheritance. Serena mentioned an old art school friend in South America once, but I've never met them. The detective made a note. We'll look into both. Even estranged family can become attractive when there's money involved. After she left, I called attorney Dawson, the family lawyer who'd handled my company's contracts and my personal affairs for years. His response to the situation was blunt. Chloe, this is theft, plain and simple, he stated firmly when we met in his downtown office. The documentation from the bank clearly establishes the money was yours, withdrawn for a specific purpose. Your mother had no rightful claim to it. Detective Miller mentioned it might be complicated because I put it in Ilara's vault willingly, I said. Attorney Dawson removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. It complicates things, yes, but doesn't change the fundamental nature of the crime. However, pursuing this internationally will be challenging. We need to file emergency motions, contact authorities in likely destination countries, and freeze any accounts they might transfer the money into. How long will all that take? His expression told me what I didn't want to hear. Weeks at minimum, possibly months, and even then, success isn't guaranteed, especially if they've planned as carefully as it appears. I left his office with a growing sense of dread. The legal process would be lengthy, expensive, and might ultimately prove fruitless. Meanwhile, my mother and sister were free, spending my money with abandon. The emotional toll was becoming unbearable. I started seeing Dr. Harper, a therapist specializing in trauma and betrayal, twice weekly. In her softly lit office, I struggled to articulate the depth of my pain. I keep replaying every interaction, looking for signs I missed, I admitted during my 3rd session. Was Ilara always this person? Did she always resent me? Was every I love you just part of a long con? Dr. Harper leaned forward slightly. The human mind isn't designed to process betrayal of this magnitude, especially from those we've categorized as safe people. It challenges our entire understanding of reality. I trusted them completely, I whispered. I would have given them anything they asked for. Why steal from me? Some people develop distorted thinking patterns around money and fairness. They may have created a narrative where they deserve this, where taking was justified because of perceived imbalances. It doesn't make it true, and it certainly doesn't make it right. These sessions helped, but only marginally. Nightmares plagued my sleep, dreams where I chased my mother and sister through endless airport terminals, always a few steps behind. I'd wake gasping, drenched in sweat, reaching for Ben only to find his side of the bed empty. He'd taken to sleeping in the guest room, claiming my restlessness kept him from getting the sleep he needed for work. Our relationship was another casualty of the theft. What had once been a partnership full of warmth and understanding was becoming increasingly strained. Small disagreements escalated into arguments. Silence stretched between us like physical distance. You need to start thinking about moving forward, Ben said one evening after I'd spent hours on the phone with Detective Miller discussing a possible sighting of my mother in the Mediterranean. It's been almost 6 weeks, Chloe, moving forward. They stole $10 million from me, Ben? I know, he sighed, exhaustion evident in his voice. But you're letting this consume you. You've barely left the apartment. You're not sleeping. You're not eating properly. You turned down that major project because you can't focus on work right now. That's exactly my point. Your entire life has become about finding them. There's more to you than this situation, Chloe. I couldn't make him understand that this wasn't just about the money. It was about the complete shattering of my reality. Every childhood memory was now tainted. Every sacrifice my mother had supposedly made for me called into question. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to uncover disturbing details. Alara had apparently been maintaining a secret ledger for years, one I knew nothing about. In it, Detective Miller found communications with Serena dating back 18 months, discussing what they called the True Legacy Plan. There were references to secret property liens on old Vance family land parcels, long hidden debts from disastrous speculative art acquisitions Alara had made without anyone's knowledge. Bank records showed she had taken out multiple high-interest loans, presumably to cover these losses, desperately trying to maintain the illusion of family wealth. Most disturbing was a hidden journal Detective Miller found secreted away in a false bottom of Alara's old writing desk. It contained detailed notes on Ethelred's acquisition of the Vance Hall project, articles about my success meticulously annotated in my mother's handwriting, and a list titled Chloe's Weaknesses. At the top of that list, blind trust in family legacy, and lower down, desire to reclaim what was lost. Each discovery was another knife twisting in an already fatal wound. The mother I thought I knew, the woman who'd spoken so lovingly of our heritage, who'd beamed with pride at my architecture awards, was a carefully constructed fiction. Or perhaps worse, she had once been that person, but somewhere along the way, resentment and greed had corroded whatever love she'd felt for me, leaving behind only calculation and opportunity. As the investigation stretched into its 7th week, the practical ramifications of the theft became increasingly difficult to ignore. The sellers of Vance Hall had accepted another offer. The financial advisors I'd arranged to help manage my newfound wealth were asking uncomfortable questions about the missing funds. Rumors were circulating in the architecture community about my judgment and stability. My life was unraveling thread by thread, and I couldn't see how to stop it. 7 weeks after the theft, I sat in Detective Miller's office, the now familiar space doing nothing to soften the blow of her latest update. The authorities in Monaco found the luxury yacht they were renting, but they checked out 3 days ago, she explained, sliding photos across her desk. They've changed their appearances. I stared at the surveillance images. Alara's signature silver bob was now long and dyed a rich blonde. Serena had gone brunette and was wearing colored contacts that changed her hazel eyes to dark brown. Both had lost weight and were dressed in expensive designer clothes I didn't recognize. They don't even look like themselves, I murmured, tracing my finger over my mother's face. The woman in the photo was a stranger with Alara's bone structure. They're using the names Eleanor and Sophia Carrington. We believe they purchased these identities on the dark web. They're elaborate forgeries with digital fingerprints going back several years. How is that even possible? Detective Miller leaned back in her chair. With enough money, unfortunately, almost anything is possible. The network they're working with specializes in this type of identity transformation. They create paper trails, digital footprints, even social media histories. So you're saying they could be anyone, anywhere, and we'd have no way of knowing? Not exactly. These identities were discovered because we knew to look for them. But yes, they're making tracking them significantly more difficult. I left the police station feeling hollowed out. The investigation was ongoing, but every lead seemed to dissolve into nothing. My mother and sister were professional ghosts now, slipping through international jurisdictions with their new identities and seemingly limitless funds. When I returned to my apartment, I found 3 voice messages waiting. The first was from attorney Dawson, with an update on the international legal filings. The second was from the real estate agent who'd been helping me find a new space for Ethelred, checking if I wanted to view a property that had just come on the market. The third was from Marcus Thorne, a potential major client I'd been in talks with before the theft. His message was polite but clear. Given the recent, complications in your personal situation, Chloe, I think it's best if we put our discussions on hold for now. Call me when things settle down. It wasn't the first professional opportunity that had evaporated since news of the theft broke. A feature in Architectural Digest had been quietly canceled. Speaking engagements were being rescheduled. Former colleagues who'd been eager to discuss potential collaborations suddenly had full calendars. The design world, for all its talk of innovation, was deeply conservative when it came to personal instability. No one wanted to align themselves with someone whose judgment was so publicly called into question. After all, if I couldn't protect my own assets from my family, how could I be trusted with investor money or sensitive industry partnerships? The breaking point came that evening when Ben returned from work. his expression carefully neutral as he set his laptop bag on the counter. "I got a call from Detective Miller today," he said. "She wanted to know if I'd heard anything from your mother or sister." "And had you?" The question came out sharper than I intended. His face hardened. "Of course not. But the fact that you'd even ask that says everything about where we are right now." "Where we are?" "Yes, Chloe, where we are." He gestured between us. "You don't sleep, you barely eat, you spend every waking moment either talking to the detective or that lawyer or scrolling through international banking regulations. When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about the theft?" I tried to remember but couldn't. The theft had become my whole world. The pursuit of justice my only purpose. "They stole $10 million, Ben. What am I supposed to do, just let it go?" "No, but you need to find a way to live while you're dealing with this. It's been 7 weeks, and you're still in exactly the same place emotionally as you were the day it happened. That's not fair." "What's not fair is watching the woman I love disappear into this black hole of obsession and being completely powerless to help her." His voice cracked slightly. "I've tried to be patient, I've tried to be supportive, but you're not letting me in, Chloe. You're shutting down every attempt I make to connect with you." I felt defensive anger rising. "So this is my fault? I'm the victim here." "Yes, you are. But you're using that as an excuse to push away everyone who cares about you. Your friends have stopped calling because you never return their messages. You've turned down every invitation to get out of this apartment. And when I try to talk about anything other than the theft, you shut down or find a way to circle back to it." Deep down, I knew he was right, but admitting it felt like another surrender, another loss I couldn't afford. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice small. Ben ran a hand through his hair. "I want you to decide if there's room in your life for anything besides this pursuit, because right now it doesn't feel like there is. Are you giving me an ultimatum?" "I'm asking for honesty, Chloe. Can you see a future beyond this? Can you imagine a day when you're not consumed by finding them?" I opened my mouth to say yes, to promise him I could move forward, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was, I couldn't imagine it. The betrayal had become my identity. The pursuit had become my purpose. "I think I need some space," Ben finally said into the silence. "I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. When you're ready to have a life again, a real life, not this holding pattern, call me." He packed a bag while I sat motionless on the couch, unable to find the words to make him stay, unsure if I even wanted to. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt impossibly empty. I spent that night alone staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 7 weeks, then expanding backward, examining my entire relationship with Alara and Serena through this new, tainted lens. Had there been signs all along? Had I been willfully blind because acknowledging the truth was too painful? Or had they genuinely changed, corrupted by the prospect of wealth beyond their imagining? I'd reached rock bottom. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. Ben was gone. My professional reputation was in tatters. The money was still missing, and despite weeks of international investigation, my mother and sister remained free, enjoying the fruits of their betrayal. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, hollow-eyed, gaunt, defeated. This wasn't who I was. This wasn't who I wanted to be. Something had to change. I just didn't know what or how. The call that changed everything came at 2:17 a.m., jolting me from a restless sleep. I fumbled for my phone, squinting at the screen. Liam Maxwell, one of the security guards who escorted me to my mother's house that fateful day. "Liam, what's wrong?" My voice was thick with sleep. "Ms. Vance, I apologize for calling so late, but I need to speak with you immediately, in person. It's about your situation." Fully awake now, I sat up. "It's the middle of the night. Can this wait until morning?" "No, ma'am, it can't. What I need to tell you shouldn't be discussed over the phone. I can be at your apartment in 20 minutes. His tone left no room for argument. "All right, I'll be here." Exactly 19 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Liam stood in the hallway, still wearing his security company polo shirt, his expression grave. "Thank you for seeing me," he said as I let him in. "Is the apartment secure? No cleaning service or maintenance staff been here recently?" "No, just me. What's this about, Liam?" He scanned the living room before speaking. "The money your mother and sister took, it wasn't real." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? The cash in those bags was counterfeit. Sophisticated fakes, but fake nonetheless. I sank onto the couch, struggling to process his words. That's impossible. I withdrew it from Coastal City Bank myself. Owen and Bryce were there. Liam nodded. Yes, but what you don't know is that Kyle, my boss, has a standard protocol for high-value transports, especially when a client expresses any pre-existing concerns. All cash bundles are tagged with tracking devices and security strips that detect the chemical composition of real currency. 3 days before the withdrawal, when we first discussed the scale of this, you contacted Kyle privately. You said you had concerns about your mother's intentions, about her past financial dealings, and wanted to set up a contingency plan. You had us swap the real cash for counterfeits at our secure facility even before it went to the bank. You signed a special instruction form, which you likely glanced over during the stress of that initial bank withdrawal. The authentic currency has been held in our most protected vault ever since. My head spun. Liam, I never did that. I would remember something like that. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded document. This is the special instruction form you signed. That's your signature, isn't it? I stared at the paper, at my unmistakable signature, authorizing exactly what Liam had described. A memory flickered. Liam pulling me aside at the bank. A brief conversation I dismissed as standard security protocol, signing something without fully reading it amid the chaos of the massive withdrawal. I don't remember this specifically, I admitted, but everything was so chaotic that day. Kyle wanted to contact you immediately after your mother took the bags, but our monitoring system for the security strips malfunctioned. We only confirmed the switch happened yesterday when we did a full system diagnostic. He sent me to tell you in person because of the sensitive nature of the situation. So my mother and sister have bags full of extremely convincing, but ultimately worthless paper? Laughter bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, a strange, almost hysterical sound that I couldn't control. All this time, all this anguish, and my mother and sister had stolen worthless counterfeits. The cosmic justice of it was almost too perfect to believe. The real $10 million, I said when I could finally speak normally again. It's in your secure facility, waiting for my instructions? Yes, Ms. Vance, untouched. And the tracking devices and the fake money? I asked, a plan already forming in my mind. Still active. We can monitor their location in real time. He showed me a tablet displaying a blinking dot on a map, currently showing movement in Venice. I straightened my shoulders, feeling truly awake for the first time in weeks. I want everything you have on their movements, every location, every stop, every transaction you can trace. Ms. Vance, if I may ask, what are you planning to do? A smile spread across my face, not the broken, hollow expression I'd worn for weeks, but something sharper, more determined, something I should have done from the beginning. I'm going to take control of the situation. Over the next 72 hours, I transformed from victim to strategist. I assembled a small, trusted team, Liam for security expertise, Detective Miller, who was initially skeptical but quickly convinced by the irrefutable evidence Liam provided, Olivia Chen, my former chief operations officer and closest friend, who brought her sharp, analytical mind, and Attorney Dawson, who helped navigate the international legal complexities. We gathered in a conference room at Liam's facility, surrounded by maps, financial records, and surveillance photos. The tracking data from the counterfeit money had given us a detailed picture of Alara and Serena's movements across Europe and Asia. They've established a pattern, I explained, pointing to the map. After Monaco, they went to Rome, then Florence. Now they're in Venice. They're staying at 5-star resorts, shopping at luxury boutiques, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. They're spending what they think is my money as quickly as possible. Based on their current rate of expenditure, Olivia, they'd run through all $10 million within 18 months. They're not just spending, Detective Miller added. They're flaunting. Look at these social media accounts we've identified. She displayed several Instagram profiles showing carefully cropped photos of luxury goods, exotic locations, and champagne toasts. Though the faces were never clearly visible, I recognized Alara's distinctive pearl necklace, Serena's unique hand tattoo. They want me to see it, I realized. They think I'm tracking these accounts, watching them enjoy what they stole from me, which gives us an advantage. They're predictable, Liam said. Based on their social media posts and spending patterns, we believe they're headed to an exclusive art auction in Venice next week, planning to acquire a stolen Renaissance painting, a highly illicit but prestigious purchase that fits their old money fantasy, and one where cash would be preferred. Then that's where we'll be waiting, I decided. I want to see their faces when they realize what they actually took. The plan came together with military precision. Private investigators in Italy confirmed Alara and Serena had booked private viewings for the auction and made reservations under their false identities at the exclusive gritty palace. Attorney Dawson arranged for cooperation from Italian financial authorities, interested in the movement of counterfeit currency and art fraud. 5 days later, I sat in a first-class seat bound for Venice, Olivia beside me, reviewing our strategy one final time. For the first time since the theft, I felt something like peace, not because I was about to confront the people who had betrayed me, but because I had reclaimed my agency, my power. "Are you nervous?" Olivia asked as our plane began its descent. I considered the question carefully. "No," I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I'm ready." Venice greeted us with unseasonably warm sunshine and clear blue skies, as if the universe itself approved of what was about to unfold. Our team established a command center in a suite at a hotel near the gritty palace, where Liam's surveillance confirmed Alara and Serena had checked in that morning. "They've confirmed their attendance at the auction at the Palazzo Contarini for tonight," Detective Miller informed us, reviewing the intelligence gathered by our Italian counterparts. "Private viewing room for the painting, just before the main auction. Champagne pre-ordered." "Perfect," I said, studying the palazzo's floor plan. "We'll confront them there, public enough that they can't make a scene, private enough for what needs to be said." Attorney Dawson adjusted his tie nervously. "Remember, we have Italian financial authorities and the Carabinieri art squad standing by. Once we confirm the counterfeit bills are in their possession, they'll move in." I nodded, but a strange calm had settled over me. The fury that had driven me for weeks had transformed into something colder, more focused. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure, about reclaiming my narrative. At precisely 8:15 p.m., I walked into the Palazzo Contarini, wearing a simple black architectural gown, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Olivia and Liam positioned themselves at the entrance. Detective Miller waited outside with the Italian authorities. Attorney Dawson remained at the command center, coordinating our legal response. I spotted them immediately. My mother wore an emerald green designer gown I'd never seen before, her newly blonde hair elegantly styled. Serena was draped in what appeared to be vintage couture, diamond earrings catching the light as she laughed at something on her phone. On a pedestal before them, illuminated by a spotlight, was the small, exquisite Renaissance painting they were about to acquire. On a nearby table sat an open bottle of Prosecco and a black Hermes handbag that likely contained some of the counterfeit cash. They didn't notice me until I was standing directly beside their table. "Room for one more?" I asked quietly. The transformation in their expressions would have been comical under different circumstances. Shock, fear, and confusion chased each other across their faces as they registered my presence. "Chloe?" My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "How did you find you?" "It wasn't difficult. You haven't exactly been subtle." I pulled out a chair and sat down, signaling to the hovering attendant that everything was fine. "Nice painting and nice dress, Alara. Is that Valentino?" Serena recovered first, her expression hardening. "What do you want? Come to beg for your money back?" I smiled, the calm inside me deepening. "Actually, I came to ask how you're enjoying spending it. Is it everything you dreamed it would be? Was it worth it? Worth destroying our family? Worth becoming fugitives? Worth throwing away any shred of integrity you might have had left?" Alara's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What kind of game are you playing?" "No game. I'm genuinely curious. $10 million is a lot of money. Has it been worth it?" "Save the guilt trip, Chloe." Serena laughed, though it sounded forced. "You can make another $10 million with your precious company. This was our only chance at the life we deserve." "The life you deserve?" I repeated thoughtfully. "And what exactly do you think that is?" "Freedom," Alara said, finding her voice. "Freedom from struggling, from always being one emergency away from disaster, from watching you succeed while you what? Lived in the house I owned, accepted the monthly allowance I provided, called me every time you needed money for another self-inflicted crisis?" The words came out sharper than I intended, and I took a breath, centering myself. But that's not really why I'm here. I reached for Serena's handbag, ignoring her protest as I opened it and removed a stack of bills. Do you know what's special about high-denomination currency like this? They exchanged confused glances. They're rare enough that most people have never handled one, which makes them perfect for counterfeiting, if you know what you're doing. I held the stack up to the light, showing them the watermark. High-quality fakes, almost impossible to detect without special equipment. The blood drained from my mother's face. What are you talking about? The money you stole, it's fake. Every single bill, worthless. Serena snatched the stack from my hand. You're lying. We've been spending it for weeks. Small amounts, in tourist areas where cashiers don't look too closely, or at luxury stores, where they were distracted by your apparent wealth. But try depositing a significant sum in a bank. Try purchasing property or a Renaissance masterpiece. It won't work. Alara's hands trembled as she reached for her wine glass. I don't believe you. We took it from the vault. The real money never left the security company's vault. It's still there, all $10 million, waiting for me to use it as intended. That's impossible, Serena hissed. We took it from the safe ourselves. Yes, I leaned forward. Did you really think I'd leave that much cash unsecured without a backup plan? I knew something was wrong. I didn't want to believe it was you, but I protected myself anyway. The truth of my words registered in their expressions, dawning horror mixed with disbelief. Serena began frantically rifling through her bag, examining the bills more closely. Even if that's true, Alara said, her voice unsteady, you can't prove we took it. It would be your word against ours. That might have been true, except for the tracking devices embedded in the counterfeit bills, devices that have been recording your movements across 3 continents. I gestured subtly toward the entrance, where Detective Miller now stood with 2 Italian officers from the Financial Crimes Division and the Carabinieri Art Squad. The authorities know exactly where you've been and what you've done. Serena's face crumpled. You set us up. No, I corrected her gently. You set yourselves up. The moment you decided to steal from me. What followed was surprisingly anticlimactic. The Italian officers approached quietly, discreetly showing their badges and requesting that we all come with them. Alara and Serena were separated for questioning. Their hotel rooms were searched, revealing nearly $7 million in counterfeit bills they hadn't yet spent. In a sterile interview room at the Milan Financial Crimes Division, I sat across from my mother for what I knew would be the last time. Her designer dress looked out of place against the institutional furniture, her carefully applied makeup smudged from crying. Why? I asked simply. I gave you everything you ever asked for. What made you think you deserved it all? She wouldn't meet my eyes. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, Mom. You're my mother. I loved you. I trusted you. And you had everything. The words burst from her like they'd been held back for years. Everything always came so easily to you. Good grades, scholarships, success. Do you know what it's like to watch your child surpass you in every possible way? To become the charity case in your daughter's perfect life? To see Vance Hall bought back by your daughter, not because of family legacy, but her practical architectural skills? It was humiliating. I never saw you that way. I wanted to share my success with you, with both of you, on your terms. On your terms, she countered bitterly. Your money, your rules, your constant judgment about how we lived our lives. I considered this, wondering if there was truth in her perception I hadn't recognized. Maybe there were times I was controlling with the help I offered. But stealing from me? Planning it for months? That's not a response to controlling behavior. That's something much darker. She had no answer for that. In another room, Serena was more forthcoming with Detective Miller, perhaps hoping for leniency. She detailed how Alara had first proposed the idea, after learning about my acquisition of Vance Hall. How they had researched ways to disappear with large sums of money, practiced opening the vault when I visited, and carefully cultivated their cover story. The legal proceedings were complex and spanned multiple jurisdictions. In the end, both faced charges for theft, possession of counterfeit currency, and fraud. My mother received a 5-year sentence, Serena 3 years, with possibility of parole after 18 months. The question of whether to press charges had been agonizing. Attorney Dawson and Detective Miller both advised that I should arguing that without consequences, they might target someone else in the future. In the end, I agreed, though I declined to provide victim impact statements that might have lengthened their sentences. They've lost everything that matters, I told Attorney Dawson as we finalized the paperwork. Their freedom, their relationship with me, their credibility. That's punishment enough. 3 months after the confrontation in Venice, I finally completed the purchase of Vance Hall. Not merely the historic estate I'd originally coveted, but a symbol. It had fewer grand rooms than I imagined, but endless character, wraparound verandas perfect for morning coffee, and a sense of deep, earned security. It would no longer be just a personal residence, but the new home for Ethelred, featuring a dedicated wing for emerging architects, focused on sustainable design, a place to build and teach. Ben had returned after our confrontation in Venice, his pride in how I'd handled the situation, rekindling what had dimmed between us. We were rebuilding slowly, with regular date nights, and a standing appointment with a couples therapist, who was helping us process the trauma of the past months. You know what's ironic? I said to him one evening as we sat on the veranda swing at Vance Hall, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. If they just asked, I would have given them money, not 10 million, but enough to change their lives for the better. Ben's arm tightened around my shoulders. Some people can't ask. Taking feels like power to them, especially when asking would mean acknowledging you had something they needed. I'm not sure I'll ever understand it completely, I admitted, but I'm learning to live with the questions, and I am. The nightmares had subsided. I'd returned to work, launching a new initiative within Ethelred focused on pro bono sustainable community projects, leveraging my technical expertise without the all-consuming pressure of just chasing profit. I'd reconnected with friends neglected during my obsessive pursuit, and found unexpected strength in vulnerability as I shared my story. Perhaps most importantly, I'd learned to trust again, cautiously, wisely, but genuinely. The betrayal had not defined me, merely informed who I would become next. You know, Ben said, breaking the comfortable silence between us, most people would have been destroyed by what happened to you, but you turned it around. You're stronger now than you were before. I considered this, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear beyond the horizon. Not stronger, I corrected gently, just more myself, more certain of what matters. What mattered, I discovered, wasn't the money or even the justice I'd obtained. It was the capacity to face betrayal without becoming bitter, to seek truth without losing compassion, to rebuild without forgetting the lessons of what had been broken. As darkness settled around us, I found myself genuinely grateful, not for what had happened, but for what it had revealed. My own resilience, the loyalty of those who had stood beside me, and the profound understanding that while trust could be shattered, it could also be rebuilt, stronger and wiser than before. I've shared this story not to satisfy anyone's curiosity about family drama or financial crime, but because I know many of you have experienced betrayal in your own lives. Maybe not on this scale, but painful nonetheless. If my experience offers any comfort or wisdom, it's this. Betrayal tells you everything about the betrayer and nothing about your worth. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately made you stronger? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join our community of resilient survivors. Remember, sometimes the greatest plot twists in our lives lead to the most beautiful rewritings of our stories. Thank you for listening, and until next time, trust wisely, but never stop trusting completely.